Hello everyone and welcome to AMDG Videos, Oblivion Storytime. Now, in the Bethesda games, there are a lot of different books with a lot of lore in them, and they mostly go unread. And in my main series, I don't want to read them because I want the content to be adventurous and exciting. But if you want some more relaxing stories and you want someone to read out these books, I'm going to, in the story time, choose books at random, admittedly, and read those out for you. I have quite a few stocked up in my library, Frostcrag, Spire. Mazoga's just going to sit by and listen, and I'm going to read some stories. I don't even know what they are, never read them. So let's start with Azura and the Box, and I'm just going to say their titles and start reading. Azura and the Box. Azura and the Box, Ancient Tales of the Dreamer, Part 11, by Marobal Soul. Nichelbar had enjoyed an adventurous youth, but had grown to be a very wise, very old Dwemer, who spent his life searching for the truth and dispelling superstitions. He invented much and created many theorems and logic structures that bore his name, but much of the world still puzzled him, and nothing was a greater enigma to him than the nature of the Aedra and Daedra. Over the course of his research, he came to the conclusion that many of the gods were entirely fabricated by man and mare. Nothing, however, was a greater question to Nichelbar than the limits of divine power. Were the greater beings the masters of the entire world, or did the humbler creatures have the strength to forge their own destinies? As Nichelbar found himself nearing the end of his life, he felt he must understand this last basic truth. Among the sage's acquaintances was a holy chimer, priest named Athnic. When the priest was visiting Bethalag Zitumaz, Nichelbar told him what he intended to do to find the nature of divine power. Athnic was terrified and pleaded with his friend not to break this great mystery, but Nichelbar was resolute. Finally, the priest agreed to assist out of love for his friend, though he feared the results of this blasphemy. Athnic summoned Azura. After the usual rituals, by which the priest declared his faith in her powers and Azura agreed to do no harm to him, Nichelbar and a dozen of his students entered the summoning chamber, carrying with them a large box. "As we see you in your land, Azura, you are the goddess of the dusk and dawn, and all the mysteries therein," said Nichelbar, trying to appear as kindly and obsequious as he could be. "It is said that your knowledge is absolute." "So it is," smiled the Daedra. "You want to know, for example, what is in this wooden box," said Nichelbar. Azura turned to Athenic. Her brow furrowed. The priest was quick to explain. "Goddess, this Dwemer is a very wise and respected man. Believe me, please, the intention is not to mock your greatness, but to demonstrate it to this scientist and to the rest of his skeptical race. I've tried to explain your power to him, but his philosophy is such that he must see it demonstrated. If I am to demonstrate my might in a way to bring the Dwemer race to understanding, it might have been a more impressive feat you would have me do," growled Azura, and turned to look Nichelbar in the eyes. "There is a red-petaled flower in the box." Nichelbar did not smile or frown. He simply opened the box and revealed all it was empty. When the students turned to look Azura, she was gone. Only Athenic had seen the goddess's expression before she had vanished, and he could not speak. He was trembling so. A curse had fallen, he knew that truly, but even crueler was the knowledge of divine power that had been demonstrated. Nichelbar also looked pale, uncertain on his feet, but his face shone with not fear, but bliss, the smile of a Dwemer finding evidence for a truth only suspected. Two of his students supported him, and two more supported the priest as they left the chamber. "I have studied very much over the years, performed countless experiments, taught myself 1,000 languages, and yet the skill that has taught me the finally truth is the one that I learned when I was but a poor young man, trying only to have enough gold to eat," whispered the sage. As he was escorted up to the stairs to his bed, a red flower petal fell from his sleeve of his voluminous robe. Nichelbar died that night, a portrait of peace that comes from the contented knowledge. Publisher's note. This is another tale whose origin is unmistakably Dwemer. Again, the words of some Aldemarish translations are quite different, but the essence of the story is the same. The Dunmer have a similar tale about Nitchelbar, but in the Dunmer version, Azura recognizes the trick and refuses to answer the question. She slays the Dwemer present for their skepticism and curses the Dunmer for blasphemy. In the Aldemarish versions, Azura is tricked not by an empty box, but by a box containing a sphere, which somehow becomes a flat square. Of course, the Aldemarish versions, being a few steps closer to the original Dwemer, are much more difficult to understand. Perhaps this stage magic explanation was added by Gore Phelim because of Phelim's own experience with such tricks in his plays when a mage was not available. Marobar's soul even left the character of Nitchelbar alone, and he represents many Dwemer virtues. His skepticism, while not nearly as absolute as in the Aldemarish version, is celebrated even though it brings a curse upon the Dwemer and the unnamed house of the poor priest. Whatever the true nature of the gods, and how right or wrong the Dwemer were about them, this tale might explain why the dwarves vanished from the face of Tamriel, though Nitchelbar and his kind may not have intended to mock the Aedra and Daedra. Their skepticism certainly offended the divine orders. We're going to read Frostcrag Spire Memoirs. As I pen this, I gaze upon the walls of my home and remember the very day its design came to fruition. Although it seems like yesterday, it was actually many years ago. I was an impetuous wizard. I wasn't simply satisfied living in the arcane university. I spent years coming up with a design for my home, a place where I could practice my magic in peace and keep myself away from the prying eyes of my colleagues. I pored over tomes and dusty scrolls, scoured the bookshops of the land, and even delved into ancient ruins, looking for inspiration. Finally, as I rested my weary body at a camp outside of Bruma, and marveled in awe the majesty of the Jarrow Mountains, I became inspired. Like a madman, I began to sketch exactly what I wanted my grand dwelling to look like. It wasn't long before I completed my masterpiece, put down my quill, and took a step back to see what I had wrought. Frostcrag Spire was born, and now, as age overwhelms me and the glow is dying from my eyes, I wish to give the spire to you. The thought that my dream could one day crumble to ruin fills me with sadness. I know that you'll take care of your new home, and if need be, restore it to its former glory. Please, heed my instructions carefully. There's much to tell, and the strength drains from my limbs. Frostcrag Spire contains many wonderful inventions. I have spent my whole life perfecting them, and I hope you'll put them to good use. My pride and joy is the Atronach altar. By bringing 3 salts from the very same creatures to this altar, you can summon an Atronach familiar to do your bidding. It will obey your simple commands and defend you in times of need. Should you tire of it, simply speak to it to dismiss it. These fine creatures have protected me in my travels, and should be of great use to you. With permission from the Arcane University, I've had a spellmaking and enchanting altar placed in the tower as well. You have but to provide the mage tallow candles to power them, and they will serve you well. Working closely with my good friend Cinderium, the master alchemist of Skingrad, I have developed the Frostcrag apparatus table. This table for the discerning alchemist, and should keep even the most difficult brews become easier to create. I have also reseeded my alchemy conservatory with the best ingredients Cyrodiil has to offer, and some from beyond her borders. Finally, I have created portals to all the mage guilds in Cyrodiil. This should make it easier to travel to them in times of need. I have entrusted most of my belongings to our Luenway at the Mystic Emporium in the market district of the Imperial City. There you'll find everything you need to bring Frostcrag Spire back from the dead. She may require compensation for her time and care watching these special items, but I assure you, it's well worth the coin. Please take care of Frostcrag Spire. She is my home, and much of myself is infused with the stone and mortar. May your journeys be safe, and the roads you travel free of danger. Let's read On Morrowind. On Morrowind, by Manwë of Sunhold. After the conquest of Hammerfell, Imperial legions massed along the northeastern borders of Cyrodiil, and invasion fleets prepared in Skyrim. Initially, though the Imperial legions and navy were widely considered undefeatable, House Indoril and the Temple hierarchy proposed to resist to the death. Redoran and Dres stood by Indoril, with Telvanni remaining neutral. Hlaalu proposed accommodation. contrived border incidents in the Black Marsh ended inconclusively, but the swampy terrain did not favor Legion and Navy coordination. Against the Legion's massed west of the Silgrad Tower and Kraganmore, and the Legion's west of Blacklight and Cormaris View, Morrowind had pitifully small militias stiffened by small companies of Redoran mercenaries and elite units of house nobles, and temple ordinators and armigears. Further complicating matters was the refusal of Indoril, Dress, Halalu, and Telvanni to garrison the western borders. Indoril and Dress proposed, rather than defend, the western border, instead to withdraw to the interior and fight a guerrilla war, with Halalu advocating accommodation and Telvanni remaining neutral. Redoran therefore faced the prospect of standing alone against the Empire. The situation changed radically when Vivek appeared in person in Vivek City to announce his negotiation of a treaty with the Emperor Tiber Septon, reorganizing Morrowind as a province of the Empire, but guaranteeing all rights of faith and self-government. A shocked temple hierarchy, which apparently had not been consulted, greeted the announcement with an awkward silence. Indoril swore they would resist to the death, with the loyal support of Dres, while Redoran, grateful for a grateful excuse to avoid facing the legions unsupported, joining the Halalu in welcoming the agreement. Telvanni, seeing which way the wind would blow, joined with Halalu and the Redoran in supporting the treaty. Nothing is known of the circumstances of the personal meeting between Septim and Vivek, or where it took place, or the preliminaries which must have preceded the treaty. The public reason was to protect the identities of the agents involved. In the West, speculation has centered around the role of Zuran Arctis in brokering the agreement. In the East, rumor suggests that Vivek offered Numidium to aid the conquest of the Altmer and Somerset Isles in return for significant concessions to preserving self-rule, house traditions, and religious practices in Morrowind. The Lord High Counselor of the Grand Council, and Indoril, refused to accept the treaty and refused to step down. He was assassinated and replaced by Halalu. House Halalu took the opportunity to settle some old scores with House Indoril, and a number of local councils changed hands in bloody coups. More blood was shed in these inter-house struggles than against the Imperial Legions during Morrowind's transition from independent nation to a province of the Empire. The generals of the legions had dreaded an invasion of Morrowind. The Dunmer were widely regarded as the most dreadful and fanatic foes, further inspired by their temple and clan traditions. The generals had not grasped the political weakness of Morrowind, which Emperor Tiber Septim recognized and exploited. At the same time, given this tragic depopulation and destruction experienced by the other provinces conquered by Septim, and the swift and efficient assimilation of Morrowind into the imperial legal systems and economy, with relatively small impact on lower or upper classes of Morrowind citizens. The tribunal also deserves some credit for recognizing the hopelessness of Morrowind's defense and the chance of gaining important concession at the treaty table by being the first to offer peace. By contrast, many Indoril nobles chose to commit suicide rather than to submit to the Empire, with the result that the house was significantly weakened during their period of transition, guaranteed that they would lose much of their influence and power to House Halalu, whose influence and power was waxing its enthusiastic accommodation with the Empire. The temple hierarchy more skillfully managed their loss of face, remaining aloof from political struggles and earning the goodwill of the people by concentrating on their economic, educational, and spiritual welfare. And guys, that has been Oblivion Storytime. I've done some reading in the beautiful library of Frostcrag Spire. We read today Azura and the Box, an interesting mythological tale, possibly mythological tale about trying to fool one of the Daedra. We've also read the the Frostcrag Spire Memoirs, which was an interesting story about the person who owned this very tower which I'm reading in. And finally, we read On Morrowind, a little history of how Morrowind being taken over by the Imperials. So I'm here, we'll do some more of these, and again, these are just kind of laid-back story reading times where I explore more of the lore of Cyrodiil and Tamriel in general. Thank you all for listening, have a great day, God bless, and goodbye.